If you know anything about me, then you know that I loathe politics. But after seeing the trailer for the new Steve Carell movie, Irresistible, which is available now on demand, I was intrigued because it looked like it was more than just politics. Is it worth checking out and paying the rental price? Two big-time political strategists go head-to-head in a small-town mayoral race in rural Wisconsin. I want to say a huge thanks to Sandwich John Films for allowing me to screen this. Check out sandwichjohnfilms.com for entertainment news, giveaways, and early access movie screenings. Steve Carell stars as Gary, a Democratic political strategist, and this guy has worked on some big-time political campaigns. Presidential campaigns. And he wants the public to regain confidence in the party. He wants to illustrate to them that they can be more than just far left liberals. He is likable at parts, but he's also really grating at other times. Think about the very best of Michael Scott and the very worst of Michael Scott. And that's Gary. He's a bit schizophrenic, but maybe that's because the character is trying to play a role that's not really him. He's trying to come across as a caring, moderate person. Rose Byrne is Faith, the Republican counterpart to Gary. She's crude and she's grating also, and she's more grating than Gary is. But I do appreciate her bluntness and her forthrightness. Like, she just comes out and says that she's a dirtbag and what she's going to do. There's no sugarcoating it. So I kind of appreciate just the openness to be honest about what it is that you're doing. For a while, I really thought that Gary and Faith were exes based on how they treat each other, how they interact, but the film doesn't tell us that, so I don't think maybe that's true. I think it comes from their deep devotion to their respective political ideologies and the vitriol that is created from being on opposite sides of the fence. Now we get an awesome performance, as always, from Chris Cooper. He's playing Jack, a retired Marine colonel who is the one who's actually running for mayor in this small Wisconsin town. He's the one that Gary comes to help build up, to help run the campaign, really to even convince him to run. And Jack is kind of that down-home, tell-it-like-it-is, honest, hardworking guy. What I really love about his character is the visual discomfort that we see when he has to talk about himself. And think about it, that's what politics is, especially in a race where you're trying to gain votes. You have to stand up in front of people and tell them why they should vote for you, why you're better than the other guy, or why your position is the best position. And so to see somebody who's not comfortable doing that, it works, and he does it so well. When the movie begins, I was really afraid that it was going to be very heavy-handed in its politics. Like he was just going to yell at me to tell me that one party is way better than the other one. But it switches gears kind of quickly, and that informs me then that this is a satire. Okay, so now you've got my attention. The story itself is pretty straightforward and easy to follow. Like I said, Gary comes to this small town to basically convince Colonel Jack to run for mayor. And when he does that, the political machine starts, which then garners the attention of Faith, the opposing side, and it becomes much larger than it really warrants for such a small rural town. And even though the story is easy to follow, even though it is straightforward, it is a little clunky in parts. And there are a few moments where the characters feel like they are truly just talking more about politics than delivering lines of dialogue. So it doesn't fit naturally with the stream of conversation. It's not constant, it's not terrible, but in those moments, it just broke me out of the narrative that I was watching because it was kind of like an aside that was not an aside, and it wasn't really directed at me. It's not like somebody was talking to me in the audience. It was just the characters then started having this banter, and it felt a little weird. A lot of the comedy in this works. Some of it does feel forced, and a lot of it surrounding the character of Faith is just really crude. And I don't know what they were really trying to say by making her so crude other than maybe to just make her abrasive. But in the end, I didn't find it as funny. I just found it more annoying than anything. On the whole, the film is shot really well and it looks great to watch. But there are a few weird shot choices that they made that they don't make any sense. And here's one example is where a shot focuses on a girl going to take a drink from a straw. But what it does is it focuses really close on the straw and the girl comes towards the camera and then she drinks from it and then the camera moves on. There was 0 point to it, and it was just, visually, It was bizarre. There's also an establishing shot of Gary walking down the street, and it begins with an extended shot of just his feet. And then it starts to move up. So is this to draw attention that he's wearing New Balance shoes? And what's that saying? Is that product placement? Is that trying to tell us something about the character himself? Or maybe it's just a slight nod to Steve Carell's character in Crazy Stupid Love. So if you've seen that, then you get the whole New Balance thing. I mean, I'm going to go with that because in my mind, that makes the most sense, or that's the one I like the best. There are times in this where the satire feels like it gets a little bit lost, like they kind of wandered off the path a little bit and kind of got lost in the story or what they were trying to say, and then they bring it back. John Stewart is the writer and the director of this, so I really figured that it would have a point, that it would have a deeper meaning to it, and that he was going to give us more than a satire. And what I like is that he gave us a satire that was steeped in some commentary as well. I think what surprised me most about this film is that it wasn't so far to one political side. Now, it did have its leanings. It definitely did lean more towards the Democratic side than the Republican side, but it took its opportunity to poke fun at both. I mean, it points out the flaws that are evident in both parties. And then he can uncover the real issue, which is money and the accountability or lack thereof. Now, some of the best commentary of this film comes during the credits. There are some mid-credits and in-credit scenes, and I loved them. But I think it's unfortunate that that's where like the most poignant commentary comes, that it wasn't included in the film. It was kind of like an aside, kind of like us being able to watch John Stewart's mind work a little bit, but I would have liked it to have been also inserted into the film as well. Overall, this is a decent watch. I mean, currently, as I'm recording this, it has a 40% score on Rotten Tomatoes, and I don't get why it's so low. It's humorous, timely, and has a pretty good point, regardless of where you stand politically. It's $20 to rent on demand right now, which is pretty steep if you're watching it alone. But if you are going to watch it with a group of friends or family, then the price per person goes way down and actually makes it a lot less than going to the theater. So in that sense, it does make it worth it to see, even if you wait a few days or a few weeks before you decide to rent it. There's no sex, nudity, or violence, but there is a lot of profanity and some political talk if that happens to offend you. I give Irresistible 3.5 out of 5 couches. I'm curious if this is something that you would watch, that you would want to see. I mean, let me know why or why not. Or if you've already seen the movie, let me know what you thought about that. Let's have a conversation down below in the comments. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.